clouds over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Well, good afternoon and greetings, everyone. Here's the question. Will Africa become the cradle of the global workforce? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they occur in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historical context in which most events take place. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which they occur, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that impact the global village in which we live. Before we get to my guest, there is some breaking news that is incredibly relevant across the globe, and I want to put this in very quick context. President Trump has just announced that he will decide on whether or not to strike Iran within 2 weeks. He'll make this decision within 2 weeks. He announced this earlier today, according to the White House, quote, based on the fact that there is a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks, according to the Washington Post. Now, the Wall Street Journal reports Trump privately approved attack plans for Iran, but has withheld the final order. That he's hoping to that threatening to join Israel's strikes will lead Tehran to abandon its nuclear program. And the final point on this issue, the White House has quietly reached out to MAGA influencers to quell any backlash. And again, this is the Wall Street Journal. President Trump's political base is splintering over the prospect that the U.S. could join Israel's assault on Iran, and the White House is trying to quell that backlash. Those, I think, are some incredibly interesting dynamics and developments that are taking place as we speak. On today's episode, the issue before us is the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum of 2025 is being held in Russia from the 18th of June to the 21st of June. And on the one of the main focal points is the discussion was Africa as a driver of the future economic order. My guest is the chairman of the African Advisory Council, François Ndengwe, and he joins us from St. Petersburg, Russia. My brother François, welcome back.
Thank you, Brother Wilmer. I'm very grateful to you to give me this opportunity to speak on your wonderful show. And my warmer greetings to all your listeners.
Thank you very much. And I have to congratulate you again, as we congratulated you just a couple of weeks ago, because you received a standing ovation from the audience after your phenomenal presentation. Congratulations, my dear brother. Again, another award.
Yes, we should thank the ancestors. All the honor to the ancestors and to possibility that they're giving us to speak the truth. And speaking in a Russian audience, it was not only a Russian audience, it's all the countries here. You hear about isolating Russia. This is a failure. All the countries are representing here, even Americans. So this was a large audience, and to bring a convincing and a counterintuitive ideas like the one I developed, I was myself surprised. And given that the chair, the moderator was no less than Mr. Maxim Oreshkin, who is correctly the deputy chair of the staff, chief of staff to President Putin. So at this highest level, to be recognized is something that it's grateful, and I thank the ancestor. But as a scholar, we should stick on the truth, and I'm just telling the truth. If someone shows that I'm lying, I'm ready to discuss.
Well, elaborate a little bit on the fact that this international economic forum, the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum of 2025, and the fact that it is being held in St. Petersburg, Russia, that here in the West, you mentioned isolation. All we hear about is isolation. But it's interesting, I read an article a day or two ago that Donald Trump was talking about reinstating Russia in the G8. And I think he talked about this before he left in embarrassment, the G7 summit. So if you could just elaborate a little bit on, kind of dispel some of this disinformation regarding the perception that the world has about Russia.
You've said the correct word is the perception, or the perception of the reality is far from the reality. From the very beginning, the single idea of thinking that you can isolate Russia is a madness. Russia is a very large country, over 17 million square kilometers, almost double the size of the USA. Russia is repleted with resources that you can find nowhere in Europe. Russia is made up of one of the most intelligent people on earth. They were the first to defeat Nazism. And almost, let's say, around a decade ago, even though their country was completely destroyed, they were the first to send someone in space. I used to have to hear this phrase, whether from how do you call this senator, who said, "Oh, Russia is only a gas station masquerading as a government." This is something that I have never heard something as stupid like that. If you know the history of science, of mathematics, Russia is a country among the rare countries on the world who creates mathematics, chemistry. Chemistry is based on the Russian guy called Mendeleev, who established his table of the natural elements. So the idea, look at the map. We have to come back to geography. Look at the map, how huge Russia is. To think that you can isolate Russia without suffering is a madness. And in fact, those who are suffering the most of this so-called isolation are the Western European countries. For the time being, the United States is more or less spared because the United States is also vast, and because the United States still have the dominance of the US dollars. Have you removed the dominance of the US dollars, the United States will not sink, of course, but will suffer much more than Russia. Had we done half of what Russia has been capable of enduring these 3 years to the United States, the economy of the United States will be down. Yet you come here in St. Petersburg, you see one of the most beautiful cities on earth. You see people who are warm. You see streets who are clean. You see an intellectual environment, this is captivating and motivating. And most of us, I've just said, you see at this St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, which is at its 25th edition, you see the whole world. So isolation is a failure, and the world cannot isolate or cannot put Russia aside.
I think it was Senator John McCain.
John McCain, yes, John McCain.
Russia is a gas station masquerading as a country. So your one of the main focal points in the discussion is Africa as a driver of the future economic order. Talk about that, please.
No, this is perhaps the most important geopolitical topics today. Of course, you have the wars in Ukraine, you have the war in the Middle East, you have all these things. But this was my message, and it was not easy to convince the people of my ideas. And this idea is the result of decades of research. To sum up it, the question I had to answer was, how can Africa become a new driver of global growth? And as you have said, and I thank you for that at the beginning, we are building from what we did in April in Moscow that earned me to win the competition among different scholars. So I will answer this question in 4 points. I will just mention the first two, because otherwise it will be too long. And then if you have time, I'll talk about the others. If you want to analyze a potential a country, and this I recall in my speech, a quote from Bismarck that President Putin put it out during his famous interview with Tucker Carlson. At a certain point in an interview, when Tucker Carlson asked him a question, President Putin said, quoting Bismarck, that to analyze a country, the most important thing is to look at the potential. And this is critical. And I am looking here at the potential. You know that even if you have a child, you don't know his potential. Before Einstein became Einstein, he was there like any other child, but the potential was already there. This is something philosophical that we have to see. We have different countries, different people, different children. You have different players. You at high school, you don't know who will become the next Michael Jordan. So potential is always there. But for countries, I have come out with a concept that I say the foundational economic potential. Let me repeat, the foundational economic potential. So my argument, my thesis is that the foundational economic potential of Africa exceeds that of the United States and China united, combined. This means that if Africa was to exploit its foundational economic potentials, Africa will be more prosperous than the United States, the American and the Chinese united. Let me break it down small. What are the elements of the foundational economic potentials? There are many elements, but we will seek at two. The first one is the demographic. You know that to produce wealth, there is only one way to produce wealth. You produce wealth by combining the knowledge of man with natural resources. So the first thing is man, human resources, the demographic. And what does the demographic say? If you look at the data, Africa's demographic exceeds that of the United States and China combined. Let's give you just a little, we plot this a little bit. By the middle of the 50s, Africa's population was around 1/3 that of Europe. In the middle of the 90s around, Africa's population was the same, the size of the population of Europe. By 2050, Africa's population will be almost 3 times the size of Europe. That is so above 2.5 billion inhabitants. At that same time, the US and the Chinese population will be less. Africa will have over 500 million people more than China, and more than, even if you combine with the United States. This means that the human resources is there, but most importantly, you don't have to look at only demographic as absolute value. You have to look at what demographers call the pyramids of age. Chinese population is aging and even diminishing. The United States population is also aging, but it's not diminishing because of the immigrants and because of the influx that they have every year. Whereas Africa's population is the youngest on earth, not only in terms of numbers, but in terms of percentage of the population. It means that Africa will have the largest workforce on earth. Not really the largest, because if you combine the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, they may exceed Africa, but you cannot talk of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as an entity, whereas Africa can be an entity. You can say Africa is not a country, but on that we can speak later. But the foundational economic potential here and demographic shows that Africa exceed the United States and China combined. So the second element is the natural resources, of course. When you look at Africa, this country, despite Europeans exploiting this continent for centuries and centuries and centuries, the resources are still there. They started by exporting, capturing our people, exporting them by force, forcing them to work for them for free for years, and then they came back plundering the resources, killing people. When people like Patrice Lumumba wanted to oppose the plundering, they murdered him. When people like Kwame Nkrumah wanted to unite us, they organized a coup against him. So because they're going after our resources, look what is happening today in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Look what was happening in Niger, as France was looting that country as uranium. So the natural resources in Africa is in great abundance, and by far it exceeds what you have in the United States of America and in China combined. So why do I take these 2 examples? Because today we are told that China and the United States are the 2 most prosperous, the 2 largest economy on earth. I say, if Africa is capable of combining its potential and exploiting its potential, it will be far ahead those 2 countries. So this is part of the demonstration that I made, and I gave figures, I gave statistics, and I gave everything. So if you want, I can stop here before we continue, but this is the direction of my demonstration.
A couple of questions. First, can you explain what the Africa Advisory Board is? Where was it founded? What is its mission?
Thank you very much to give me the opportunity to explain it. African Advisory Board is a consultancy that I have created in around 2000. The idea is to promote to Africa to innovate in both the theory and practice of public policy. Public policy in Africa is based on outdated and colonialist ideas. African governments are not innovating because they have been misguided by the World Bank, the IMF, or the European advisors, and they obey to these people who have no interest in the economic development of Africa. African Advisory Board is an institution of intellectual fight. Is an institution that is bringing in the realm of academia new ideas. We bring new ideas in monetary policy, and in particular, I'm the author of a new theory of money, which is called the vectorial theory of money. And I said, if Africa can unite and apply the vectorial theory of money, no currency on earth can compete with the African currency based on this theory. And if you want, I could elaborate on the theory. African Advisory Board. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
What do you want to talk about, the vectorial theory of money?
Oh, no, okay. Well, before we get to that, let me ask a question about some of what you just articulated. And that is, as we look at the alliance of the Sahel states, as we look at what's happening in Burkina Faso, what's happening in Niger, in terms of economic shedding neocolonialism and taking that flag independence and turning that into control of their own economies and their own destinies. This to me seems to be the real threat to European/Western colonial hegemony on the continent. You're talking about what Gaddafi talked about, Africa for the Africans.
Oh no, we can go even further than Gaddafi. This is Marcus Garvey. Mm-hmm. This is Marcus Garvey, and I'm a Garveyite by essence. Marcus Garvey is our leader, is our great teacher. I always refer to him. And this is why those who, you are mentioning something even further that is deeper than you may think. Let me take 1 second to explain it.
Okay.
If you look at what they call the slave trade, mm-hmm. What happened basically among Europeans? You have three areas. You have Africa, you have Europe, and you have America. But you have two peoples, the Europeans and the Africans. Mm-hmm. What happened? The Europeans kept the relationship between Europe and Africa. While they were taking Africans by force, deporting them in the United States and in all the Caribbeans, and most importantly, preventing them from having any relationships with their cousin back in Africa. So the trick here was to destroy one great family, the African family, and maintain and strengthen the relation between the other family, the European white Caucasian family. So this trick is continuing up to today. What is NATO? If not a link maintained by the former slave countries, United States, France, British, and all the European who participate in the slave trade. Surprisingly, you see that they are the same in the NATO. At the same time, they are preventing Africans to unite. And this is what goes to your point that you were mentioning. What they are afraid of is to see an Africa that is united. That is the nightmare. Because if you step down and you ask a simple question, what has made these people so strong over centuries? And how have they built their prosperity all to today and are continuing to prosper? My response to this question is that there are basically two things on which they base their prosperity. The first, and perhaps the most important, is the fragmentation of other societies that could have resisted them. And the major victim here was Africa. As Africa wanted to unite after Marcus Garvey and other Pan-Africanist thinkers, when the European, they sat on the table in the Berlin Conference from the 15th of November 1884 to the 26th of February 1885 to divide the continent so they could conquer easily and to the edge of them. They will unite again because they are acting as a family. When they attack us, they are united. But we were not united. We are stupid. We cannot mount a common defense to oppose them. So seeing Africans united is a threat to them. So they have built their prosperity on the fragmentation of African words and also on the fragmentation of the Arab world. You see the thing that is happening in Israel and that you mentioned was Iran today. When you see the Arab countries, because of the fragmentation, they are irresponsible, they are cowards, they are bowing down to Israel, they are bowing down to Trump. Trump can go there, even though the United States of America have been financing a genocide of a new type for almost 2 years. You see the Prince of Saudi Arabia and all these people from Qatar offering him a plane of 400 million and give that some reports say total 1.3 billion. How can you offer 1.3 billion to someone who has been killing your children or your cousin for 2 years? This is not only a sign of cowardice, it shows that because you are fragmented, you cannot be strong to defend yourself or to mount a collective security. They come, they are united in the European Union, they are united among NATO, and you're afraid, you're not capable of uniting yourself. When a country like Iran try to resist, and even the Arab country, they are siding with Israel against Iran. But this is another topic. What I want to stress here, to come back to your question about Burkina Faso, what they are afraid, really afraid here, is that for the first time, we have an alliance of the Sahel states. This is the first steps of Pan-Africanism is coming about alive. They fear Pan-Africanism like fire, because they know that the moment when Africans will unite, they are finished. And it is the same thing, by the way, with African Americans in America. Don't forget what was one of the reasons why they killed Malcolm X. Malcolm X attended a meeting of the Organization of African Union in Egypt, and when he came back in America with the experience of this organization that was trying to unite Africa, he created the Organization of African American Unity, based on the premise that they will unite of all the black people, not only in the United States, but almost on the Caribbean, and then they will go to the roots of the real Pan-Africanism, which is the unity of all the people of African descent on the world. So they would no longer call you in America as minority. You are the majority if you join with Africans. Like they've been joining. Their family is united since the slavery day. They have never disunited, but they are using their force to break the unity of others while they try to build the unity. And lastly, look at this symbol. How do you explain that Donald Trump will go to South Africa claiming that white South Africans are suffering of a genocide and bringing white people in America? Is this not an attempt to unite the family of white people on the banner of racism? Why do you explain that a country that have been giving the money and the weapons to slaughter children through Israel, to genocide children for 2 years, he's pretending that there is a genocide of white people in South Africa, and this is beyond the ridicule. But to sum up on your question, they are really, really afraid of the unity of Africa. And unfortunately, most African leaders up to now have been stupid, they have been cowards, they have been corrupt, and they have been bowing to these people. And lastly, very lastly, if I may, you know Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. Dr. W.E. Du Bois organized in Paris in February 1919 the first Congress, the first Pan-African Congress. And so from 19, he has been fighting this fight. He's one of our great leaders. We may always pay homage to him. In all these fights that he started at the end of the 19th century, up to 1957, March 1957, when Ghana was being independent. Do you know what happened? Prime Minister Kwame Nkrumah extended a letter of invitation to Dr. Dubois and his wife that Dubois must come. He was supposed to be the one who would give the most important speech of this event, the independence of the first African state south of Sahara. No, we don't mention Sudan here, who was independent in 1956, but the most important fact was Ghana. So what I want to say here is Kwame Nkrumah sent this letter of invitation officially in advance, inviting Mr. and Mrs. Du Bois to come and attend the independence.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Du Bois was the great theoretician of Pan-Africanism that you know. The State Department, Brother Leo, refused to give a passport to Dr. Du Bois and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
This is a man who was almost in his 90s. You are refusing the passport for what reason? And I have the letter of protest that Dr. Du Bois wrote to the Department of State, and the letter of protest that Prime Minister Nkrumah wrote. Because why are they opposing Dr. Du Bois, an old man of 90 years? You know the reason, my brother? Because they fear Pan-Africanism. And it is just because Pan-Africanism is trying to being rebirthed in the African Sahel states, that they are so against, they are ready to do everything to destroy, so that there will be no possibility for African to unite and to realize the great potential that will make them the most prosperous place on earth.
You have developed this theory of the Victoria theory of money. Can you please explain that, please?
Oh, my brother, you are wonderful. This will be a revolution in monetary policy. Nothing like this has happened since Aristotle. As of today, I'm writing a book. I'm already on chapter 5. The book will have something like chapters 17, but all the sketch is already there. The Victoria theory of money will be a revolution in the field of money. Up to now, all they are teaching you in universities on money is a lie. Let's take the case of the US dollars. You know that prior to President Nixon speech on Sunday, the 15th of August the 15th, 1971, the US dollar was backed by the dollar. In that speech, all of a sudden,
you mean
the United States decided to sever the link between the US dollar and gold.
Right.
So we entered the area of fiat currency. Fiat currency is not a currency. Fiat currency is a false currency. It's a currency of manipulation in the hand of the people who are near the central bank. And this is to the detriment of the American people.
Well, wait a minute. Let's simplify it just a little bit more. Before Nixon's speech, the U.S. currency was backed by gold. When you move to a fiat currency is no longer linked to any valuable metal. It is merely based upon trust. You are trusting that the United States government will honor its debt and the value of the dollar will remain the value of the dollar. Is that very simply, that's the difference. Trust versus substantive material value.
Yes, my brother, you're right, but let me bring a little precision here.
Okay.
You said it's the trust, and you say based on the fact that the United States will pay his debt. You see, since the devaluation, since they severed the link, what is the trajectory of the United States debt?
The debt's going up.
Going up.
Right.
So they did not. You have not solved the debt issue.
No.
On the matter of trust, you mean the trust in the value of money, of the currency. When Nixon took that decision, we should have to go back to Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1933, when he decided overnight to fix the value of the dollars to an ounce of gold was $35 US. Go and check today. What is the value of an ounce of gold?
A value of an ounce of gold, probably around high fours, low fives.
Sorry?
An ounce?
No, 2,000 something. So there is no trust. This is a manipulation. This is the fiat currency is basically giving a group of people the power of the money of the nation. And this group of people will enrich themselves to the detriment of the nation. That is exactly what's going on. That is why the financial people and those who are around and in the Federal Reserve are those who are directing. They do it to please their people. They are not doing it to please the ordinary American. And among this ordinary American, those who are suffering the most are the black people. And I always remind you of Bernie Sanders in 2011, when after the crisis of 2008, Bernie Sanders insisted that he had to audit the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, they refused the audit. But Bernie Sanders was strong enough to force the audit. Even President Obama was saying, no, don't audit the Federal Reserve. This will be a threat to the United States national security. But Bernie Sanders audited that. Do you know what they discovered? They discovered that the Federal Reserve had printed $16 trillion, $1,600 billion that they have been distributing beneath the table to a group of friendly banks. And when you look at these friendly banks, they are not only Americans, they are Europeans and even South Koreans. And when I saw this thing, it was written, the report was published, if I'm not wrong, in July 2011 by the General Accounting Office. I went to the General Accounting Office in DC. I went to there to discuss with those people. I said, this is amazing what you're saying. How is it that the press is not talking about it? This is a matter of treason. You were talking about the trust. Even the US Congress was not aware of what is going on. Yes, the US Congress is supposed to be the voice of the people, the defender of the people purse. But this is a group of people, the central bankers, who are playing with the money as they like. But this was just a diversion to show that the system of fiat currency is a system that, by its construction, it meant to fool the people, to exploit the people, and to degrade the currency. I'm coming now with a new theory, which is the vectorial theory of money. The vectorial theory of money discards fiat currency. The vectorial theory of money is based on 3 axioms. The first axiom comes from Aristotle, who said money is not by nature. Money is something that you define as a sovereign, and the sovereign can decide what is the currency, and he can decide to upgrade and to downgrade the currency. So money is a question of law. It's a question of constitution. And when you talk of the constitution, you talk of the people. People should be in charge of the money. Don't think that central bankers are some special people with some extraordinary knowledge. So this is the first axiom. The second axiom of the vectorial theory of money, I've simplified very much, is that any currency should be backed by a set of products and services.
Mm-hmm.
And when I speak of a set, I speak of a set in mathematic terms, a number of elements. And it is this set of products and services with a defined, clearly defined proportion that make up a money. In other words, a currency, the definition, the ontology of currency, because I speak a lot of ontology of money in my book, my upcoming book, the ontology of currency bring you to a definition of money. Money should be a certificate that you have in your pocket that guarantee you that you can buy at any time and any amount, depending of what you have and money, this distribution of goods and services that serve to define the currency. I'm not talking about the gold as the old time. I'm not talking even the commodity-based currency that people like Benjamin Graham in the 1930s imagine. I'm coming with a completely new idea, completely new ideas that will bring money in the realm of the people's sovereignty, that will prevent speculator to enrich themselves, that will prevent exploiter to use public money for their private profits. And the third axiom of the vectorial theory of money is in the definition of a price. So now let me give you one example. If you suppose that you have a car today that you purchase at $10,000, in 2 years, the same car with all other conditions being equal, the same car they are selling it to you at 100, let's say 120,000. No, I said the first one, you buy it at 10,000. The second one, let's say you buy it 2 years later, they propose it at 15,000. The question now is, what is the price that we can say it's higher than the other? Normally, they will say it's the second one. But my new way of measuring inflation is not that one. I say a price is a part of a global unit. It's a fraction of a global unit. Any price should be expressed in terms of this global unit, which is peculiar to each nation. And what is this global unit? I call him the monetary momentum. Those who do mechanics know that if a body has a mass m and is moving at a speed v, what you call the momentum of that body is m multiplied by v.
Right.
So the monetary momentum is nothing less than the mass of money in circulation multiplied by the celerity of the circulation of the money. So you have to take the price. You have the price is what I call it the fractional price. A price of anything is you have the numerator and you have the denominator. To compare two fractions, you have to bring them under the same denominator. But the way inflation is measured today is they are comparing two fractions without bringing everything in the same denominator, meaning that they have been fooling students of economics, even the Nobel Prizes for years. I'm trying to bring some sense and some realities to these notions. So I think that this book will have some wave.
Getting back to my question, for example, about Burkina Faso and the Alliance of Sahel States, and I think now Botswana has been meeting with General Traoré, and we know I think Senegal also is engaged in constructive dialogue. this whole you're talking about, and what you're talking about deconstructing the established economic and colonial structure as it relates to countries on the continent. And we know that the United States and other European countries have invested a lot of time, a lot of militarism into protecting that investment, whether it's AFRICOM, for example. So how do you counter the interest of the colonial powers in protecting their established interest and using military force to do so? We can look at what's happening in the Zionist colony of Israel, as a current example of that.
This is the miracle of Africa, my brother.
Okay.
We could have ended up like the Indian in America. We could have disappeared. What haven't we not suffered? They enslaved us, they beat us, they killed us, they genocided us, they did everything. But man, black man is something strong. We were the first on this earth. Look at what you're doing. How many people in America will have survived like you survived there for centuries and centuries?
Mm-hmm.
Without them paying you, but you are strong. You produce one of the most beautiful music ever produced. The jazz music, the soul music, etc. It's a testimony to our invincibility. So these people, they know that the victory is only temporary. And they know that the time will come. And what they fear is that black people will inflict on them the same sort of violence that they have been inflicting on others. But by nature, we are not like that.
You are correct.
We are not that like they fear. Why do they fear you in America? They fear you. Look, during slave trade, people are here now. I was doing some research at Howard University. I see during the days of slavery. Now people say, oh, the First Amendment, we have to, this second, we have to possess arms. But they were possessing arms while they were refusing slaves to have arms, They were refusing slaves even to assemble. So they will act only if they disarm the other people. Coming back to you, when you say, oh, they are going to use military to do this, they have already used military.
Mm-hmm.
If I give you the list of leaders that they have killed,
mm-hmm.
how many European leaders have African killed? How many American leaders have African killed? But I can give you a long list of African leaders that European killed. And when they were killing, the pretext in those days was, oh, they are communists. Patrice Lumumba is a communist. Kwame Nkrumah is a communist. But the communist was in China. The communist was Stalin in Moscow. Why didn't they go and kill Deng Xiaoping or President Xi Jinping? So they are cowards. The nature of cowards is to go against someone who is weak.
Mm-hmm.
Today they say, oh, the encirclement of China, communism, or blah, blah, blah. They went to Vietnam. Vietnam is still ruled by a communist party. So we have to face, and this will be the moment of the day of reckoning will come. And that is why I say to Africans, you must be ready, including militarily. I'm not a military guy, but my battlefield is in the battlefield of ideas. And I know that in this battlefield, we will defeat them very, very easily. It is very easy. Look, you may know Thomas Piketty, this French economist.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Piketty just published a paper 2 weeks ago in which he is admitting that colonialism and all the trade system up to today have been to the detriment of the African people in particular, and the colonized people. He has, in this paper, which is a groundbreaking paper, by the way, and I'm surprised that people are not commenting it. He's demonstrating, he's taking data from 1884 to 2025, if that's not wrong. That is the strength of Thomas Piketty, to go down to data, to show that all this thing has been extremely profitable to the white Caucasian in Europe or in America. And when I read his paper, and you know, people talking of affirmative action, blah, 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 there have never been an affirmative action in favor of Black in America. Every policy in America has been an affirmative action in favor of the whites. From the very first time that they came on that ground, when if you were a white, you will be given a land free, taken by force, and you will be given a labor to work on that land free, that you can beat and exploit. Up to today, this is what is behind the paper of Thomas Piketty. And what sickens me, my brother, and I'm looking for the day I will have to debate one of them, these so-called Black conservatives, in particular, Mr. Thomas Sowell. If he's listening to me, I'm ready to debate it anytime. He has done a lot of harm to the Black people while by dispelling lies about the affirmative action, which it is incapable of showing the reality of the affirmative action. That will be the affirmative action for the exclusive benefit of the whites, who there have never been a single thing done in the United States up to today, which is specifically to the benefit of the Black Americans. When it started to be to the benefit of the Black American, they united other groups, and that they call minorities. The minority, the women of minorities, the lesbian of minorities. So they dissolve what should have been given exclusively to the Black Americans in a major group called minorities. So you have to be very analytic on this thing, and also you have to be vertical, as my friend Dr. Claude Anderson used to say.
And I have to thank Stromboli, the Pope of Hope, who says if for that $10 super sticker, if every American was hip to the banking and Fed Reserve foolishness, the world would look very different. Much needed dialogue. Thank you, Stromboli, the Pope of Hope. Greatly appreciate that that point, as well as the compliment. And so as we look at the dynamic within the number of countries, as China is engaging economically, as Russia is engaging economically and militarily, how do those entities' involvement in Niger, involvement in Burkina Faso, and other countries, how does that factor in to the dynamic that you're laying out in terms of African countries retaking control of their resources, developing their economies, using their demographics as the workforce?
Yes, you have mentioned two countries, China and Russia. I will stress more China. Chinese are perhaps the smartest strategies at this very moment on time on the earth. Why do I say this? This brings me back in February 2000. I was invited in Washington, D.C. to give a lecture at a summit that was called the National Summit on Africa. It was in this the conference centers, the older one in the downtown Washington, D.C. This summit was opened by President Bill Clinton himself, and you had also Madame Madeleine Albright. They asked me to give, there was the economic session, and I gave a presentation there. In that presentation, I was always talking about what I'm talking today in St. Petersburg. I was talking about the great potential of Africa and the extraordinary potential of Africa, and that this is the continent to which you have to engage in business, you have to engage in investment, you have to engage in education. Do you know the answer that I received?
No.
Benign neglect. We benign neglect Africa. Africa is not important.
Mm-hmm.
We will deal with Africa with NGO. We will deal with Africa with humanitarian thing. We will deal with Africa with there are too much diseases, too much war, too much these things. So Africa, you will ignore. We are in February 2000. At that time, there were almost no major Chinese involvement economically in Africa. Mm-hmm. But the Chinese has insight and foresight. Mm-hmm. They saw that the future is in Africa. It is at that time that they started to penetrate the African economy. And one by one, they won the trade against the former colonizer. They defeated UK, they defeated France in their former colonies, and they expanded their trades and industry with Africa. So the recent days, I was reading when Hillary Clinton coming to Africa say, oh, how is it that there are Chinese, so much Chinese in Africa? Why? Chinese are exploiting Africa. We must bring Chinese out of Africa. It is too late, mom. It is too late. They are already there. Mm-hmm. You were saying that continue with your benign neglect. We don't need you. We will do business with the rest of the world. So coming back to answer, the question now is to have leadership, because the population of Africa is aware now, in particular among the youth. You can no longer fool the youth. Mm-hmm. In the countries that are not up, it is because you have dictatorship who are maintaining the old system. But the youth of Africa, with the new favor, for Pan-Africanism, the new spirit of Pan-Africanism, making people aware of it. And I have very great hope, my brother, that things will only improve. The military will no longer be capable of doing anything. Look, when you look at Niger, mm-hmm. You look at statistics, they will always say, oh, Niger is the poorest country on earth, the lower index of human development, blah, 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 blah. But this country was capable in a matter of a month to say to the US Army, get out.
Correct.
Show me one country, other country that did that. The US Army was in Syria, refusing to go out of Syria. They are in Iraq, refusing to go out of Iraq. But Niger, in less than 1 month, say, okay, take your stuff and go out. And Chad also did the same thing. So the power, the potential, we'll come back to the potential always. The mm-hmm. potential is there. You have to activate the potential. When you saw the young Einstein, you didn't know that he will be the Einstein that we have today. But the potential was already there. So now you have Africa, the powerful and prosperous Africa with the potential. You have to activate it. And that is why of the mission of African Advisory Board.
And to your point, within, I want to say, it's been about 18 months, Burkina Faso is starting to launch satellites in coordination with Russia. They're looking to design, if not already building, a nuclear power plant. Within the span of 18 months, they are moving. They've rejuvenated their airlines. They are so they've expanded the airport in Burkina Faso. I mean, they're doing a number of very, very serious economic development programs in the matter of 18 months. They've been colonized for over 400 years, and within 18 months, they're moving at breakneck speed.
You are up to the point, my brother. And again, this brings back to the question of potentials. They're doing it because the potential is there. Look, you can add in the list of the Burkina that they have nationalized their gold. and Niger is doing the same thing. This thing was cornered by Canadian firms and other European firms. They are bringing back the gold to the people. They are processing it there. You talk about the Niger. France electricity is almost 80% uranium. Yet they were nuclear. They were taking the fuel in Niger. But if you go to Niger, you will pity these people. Even the capital city. Go on, please.
They don't have electricity. They're sitting in
They don't. So, but the potential is there. You cannot say that they are not. Niger is not going to buy uranium, let's say in China. It is under their feet. And it had been used to enrich those who cause their impoverishment. Like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said in his book, Africa Must Unite.
What are the three things you want?
1 minute, please. 1 minute.
Okay. So the next question that I'm going to pose to Francois while he is answering the door will be, what are the three major things that he wants the audience to take away from this conversation? And I really appreciate you all listening to this, participating as you have, because we're really at the beginning of this dialogue. We're really, this whole dynamic is shifting at breakneck speed. Francois, I want to ask you, what are the three things that you want the audience to take away from this conversation? What are the three most important things to you?
Yes, the first thing is that they must be aware of the potential of Africa. This is important. The potential is there and it is huge. And if they activate the potential, Africa can be this major economic force in the world. And if you're a major economic force in the world, you're a major diplomatic force. The second point is, and talking to Black America, we have to reunite. This is the time of a new Pan-Africanism, like Dr. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey and even Malcolm X thought of. This is important because you should not be looking at yourself as minority. If you unite with Africa, you are a majority. And this is important even for internal policy in the United States of America. And this is my message to the brothers and sisters in the Americas, in the Caribbean. We have to go back to the fundamentals. And you may know, by the way, that Pan-Africanism was born in the Caribbean and in America before coming back to Africa. So you are the source. You are the one who taught us what is Pan-Africanism. So we have to come back to Pan-Africanism because it's important, and it is important because it will bring justice. The third point is that we are living in a world that is very dangerous. And you mentioned the possibility of President Trump going to war on behalf of Israel. We must always be a force for peace. War is destruction. There is no way that war can bring something positive to us. War will bring something positive only to a clique. And here I refer to a book by Kenneth Galbraith, John Kenneth Galbraith, who said that the solution to the crisis of 1929 was not, as some people think, the New Deal and everything, but it was the war that brought the solutions. I may disagree here with him because war never brings a solution. It is peace. We should always be people of peace. And this will be my third takeaway.
Dr. King told us that war is the enemy of the poor.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree. This is he summarized it brilliantly, as he was accustomed to do.
Yuko says, thank you so much, Dr. Wilmer, for this interview. I'm listening to you from Belgium, and I'm a young African woman. Stephen Bryant says that this is a great informative program. Yes, and because of guests such as my brother Francois. So really quickly, how you spent a lot of time in France. How is let me not be presumptuous. Let me ask the question. Are you seeing a difference in coverage of what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening in the Zionist colony of Israel while you've been in Russia versus the coverage you've been seeing in France?
To say the truth, I have not been exposed to the coverage in Russia.
Okay.
First of all, because I don't speak Russian and I don't have access to Russian media.
Okay.
So I cannot answer that question.
Okay. Clearly understood. Greatly appreciate it. Wow. So final question. What's next? What's your next? Where am I going to be talking to you from next? In your world travels?
No. Just wish me to finish my book.
Well, hey man, I've written one. I know the challenges before you, and I know you will, and I know it isn't easy. Chairman of the African Advisory Council, François Ndengwe, thank you so much for your time today. I know it's very late for you there in St. Petersburg. Greatly appreciate that analysis. Thank you so much for granting us this time today, and I look forward to having you back.
I thank you very much, my brother, but I haven't heard jazz, so I'm a little bit sad.
Well, that's a different show. That's if I play music on this show, they won't play the show because of copyright issues and whatnot. So
all right,
we don't have the license to do that. I'm sorry you're sad, but thank you so much for your time.
I was expecting to hear some notes from Telling You Smoke.
Well, I'll just say this. Hey, folks, play more John Coltrane.
Okay, John Coltrane. No.
Francois, thank you, my brother. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Stay tuned. New episode tomorrow. We got Dr. David Walalu. Dr. David Walalu is going to join us tomorrow, and he just got back from Europe. So there's an awful lot of info and insight that he has into what's transpiring in other spaces. Follow us on social media. All the links to the show are below. Those of you that are watching on other platforms such as Facebook and Twitter and other platforms, please, baby, please go to YouTube and subscribe to the show on YouTube. And remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. That talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all tomorrow. Dr. David Walalu will join us tomorrow. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a blessed remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.